using ObjectBox framework. ObjectBox framework is basically an object database. So it doesn't need any SQL behind the scenes to make it work. It doesn't use SQLite. And also it's really simple and really fast to use. So it's much more performant than, for example, SQLite. So now let's take a look at the code, how you can include it in your project so you can actually use it. So first of all, we have this root project file, this build Gradle file. First of all, we define ObjectBox version at the very top of the build script. Then we also have to include additional dependencies for the plugin that we'll be using. Also, we will need to include a Maven repository for ObjectBox dependencies. So we'll need to do that here at the build script and inside the all projects section. Next, we can start by including the actual dependencies. So it's the ObjectBox 400 implementation and ObjectBox processor. It's the same as we had for Room. It's going to use code generation to support its features. And finally, we have a dependency for ObjectBox and RxJava integration. Also, let's not forget to include and apply plugin for ObjectBox. So when we have this ready, we can start working on the ObjectBox module that we're going to use in Dagger. So the central class in ObjectBox is this BoxStore class that provides a shared interface to access repositories for your different entities. So then using this BoxStore class, we can retrieve boxes for your various kinds of entities. So here we can see that we are doing this for stock portfolio item. And what's different from before is that we are also naming this dependency or provided dependency as stock portfolio item because it uses this generic based class called box. So we'll need to distinguish which box we will want to retrieve. And this one will be retrieved by its name, stock portfolio item. Okay, so when we have that ready, we will also need a decimal converter that's used inside the ObjectBox to do the mapping between big decimal and the format that we're going to use to store the actual data. So as before, we used a similar approach for the date object. We're going to store this time big decimal value as a long format. And to do that, we'll just convert big decimal to log format here by scaling it by the power of 4, and then we're going to return the long value. If you want to do the reverse action, so we just take the long value this received from the database, scale it back, so we don't lose the precision that we require, and it's ready to use. So now we can take a look at the actual repository. So repository is really straightforward. It uses the same interface as before. It's our root model class, portfolio repository, but inside we inject the box for stock portfolio items by using this annotation named stock portfolio item. And then we have a reference to the box that we can use to retrieve the stock portfolio items. So the queries are done in a similar fashion as we have seen with GreenDAO. So basically you have a builder for the query. Here you could specify additional conditions, what kind of items you would like to receive. And then we're gonna use this mapping class to make it from query into an observable our RxJava based interface could use. If you would like to save the item, it's again a very straightforward approach. We just use a method called put to store the class. We cannot use it this way to call it straightforward, but because it's going to be most likely executed on Android main thread, which will cause ObjectBox to throw an exception. So we just wrap it in observable, make it to be executed on IO scheduler, and then it can be saved without any problems. So basically, this is all about ObjectBox, and you have seen that it's really straightforward to use. It's annotation-based configuration. You just need to provide some wiring for the dependencies and repositories. And in the next video, we're going to take a brief look at the content providers.